So this was my first time running through the Tol Dagor dungeon, which is a 4-boss dungeon, so I thought I'd post a video with my initial thoughts of the dungeon. So if you don't want to be spoiled and see what this dungeon looks like, then don't watch this video. You need to remember that everybody here is low item level, so the dungeon is a little bit more difficult since everybody is in rubbish gear, and we are going into this blind and not knowing what to expect. So as soon as you zone into the dungeon, you appear on what seems to be a beach, and you then have to break your way into what seems like a prison in order to fight the final boss at the top of the dungeon. Directly ahead of where you spawn, after clearing a little bit of trash, will be the first boss, the Sand Queen. Now the mechanics for this fight were pretty simple, as we just had to avoid the sand trap ability, which if stood in, stuns you for a period of time. It seems that these just randomly spawned underneath or next to a player, so I just decided to kite the boss around the room whenever this ability was being cast. On higher difficulties like Mythic Plus, the whole room would most likely need to be cleared of trash, as there are a lot of sand traps that spawn throughout this fight, so a larger area for kiting would possibly be needed. The other ability the boss casts was called Upheaval. The boss buries itself under the ground and targets a random player, so you need to spread out and not stay grouped up, as when it hits it does a fair amount of damage, so it's important that only one player gets hit by this ability if possible. The boss also casts an ability called Sandstorm that acts in the same way as the winds do in the Eye of Ashara dungeon. This impairs your vision slightly and pushes you around, making it a little bit more difficult to avoid the sand traps. At 30% health, the boss enrages and gains 30% haste and 30% extra damage. But at this level of difficulty it made no real difference and was a pretty easy boss to defeat. After you kill the first boss, you head into the prison via the sewers, and you fight your way through a mixture of bugs and crocodiles. Be careful not to pull too many of these at once, as they do apply a stacking debuff that will kill you if you're careless. Now you fight through various trash packs on your way to the second boss. This will be one of the most difficult sections of the dungeon, as you have very limited space to move around in, so you will need to be careful here with your pulls and AoE, as the trash in this section is actually very dangerous, and on higher difficulties this will no doubt be the cause of many wipes. I would recommend when you come across the trash packs in this dungeon that you focus on killing the adds that are casters or the ones that have guns first when you come across them, as they hurt quite a bit from a tanking perspective. Using stuns and other CCs is also very helpful in this section, especially when the mobs start to run away, as they can pull additional mobs. When you get to the second boss, the Wolf Jess Howlis, you only really need to focus on two things when DPSing the boss down. He will cast an ability called Howling Fear, and you must interrupt this, as once it is finished casting or it is interrupted, the boss will then cast an ability called Flashing Daggers. He will throw out daggers towards the group and you must hide from this ability. Do this by moving around one of the corners, as if you are hit by this ability then you will most likely be one shot. If you did not interrupt the fear, then you will still be feared when this ability is being cast and you will no doubt die. Now once the boss reaches 50% health, he will stun everyone with a smoke bomb and run away to the other side of the room, unlocking all of the prison cells as he goes. So make sure you stay grouped up and kill the adds as fast as you can whilst moving around to the other side of the room until you reach the boss again. He will be casting an ability called Motivating Cry, which will buff the damage of any adds that are still alive. So again, on higher difficulties this will be something to look out for. Simply repeat the process at the boss as before by interrupting the fear and hiding from the flashing daggers, and the boss will die. As you can see here, the priest was not quick enough in hiding and got one shot from the daggers. So this is a deadly ability, so make sure you move quickly and don't hang around. I thought this was super fun and a very unique boss fight, and it was easily my favourite fight in the dungeon. On your way to the third boss, stick to following the set path around to the exits, and don't go running off into random doors, as the rooms can be full of mobs with a pretty large aggro range, and if pulled can cause you to wipe pretty quickly. This section of trash is kind of fun. At certain times when you are on the outside of the dungeon, one person can actually go into the cannons that are situated along the walls, and can proceed to shoot the mobs. I think the best strategy here for me as a tank would have been to pull the melee adds towards the group and for the person in the cannon to shoot the ranged mobs. I wasn't sure if the cannon was doing friendly fire to us, but it was knocking us down. So that's just something to look out for and pay attention to if you are tanking, healing or using the cannon. So after fighting your way through the trash, you will finally arrive at Knight Captain Valeri, and this will probably be the most problematic fight, at least on Mythic Plus dungeons. Now we really did not pay much attention to the mechanics on this fight, but what happens is, a number of barrels filled with gunpowder will spawn into the room, and a few seconds later red circles will appear around them. Now you have to move the barrels out of the circles, as if you don't, then the barrels will ignite, and they will cause a much larger circle to appear in the room, which if stood in, when it explodes, will do damage. This can mean that if you're not careful, you can quickly leave yourself with nowhere to stand. On top of this, at any time a barrel comes into contact with fire, it will ignite, so players must avoid picking up a barrel if you are affected by the fuse lighter debuff. And the tank needs to try and move the boss away from the barrels, since the boss casts fire damage and can also ignite the barrels. You can see on higher difficulties how this could turn out to be a complete nightmare and no doubt wipe you. After fighting another small amount of trash, you will arrive outside and at the top of the dungeon to face the final boss, Overseer Corgus. This boss has a few abilities. He marks a number of players with a crosshair called Explosive Burst, and you simply just have to spread out with this ability and not stand on one another. He also casts an ability called Cross Ignition, which is just numerous lanes of gunpowder laid out across the floor, so just make sure you're not standing in the black sections. Another ability he casts is called Deadeye, and this will target one player. The initial hit does not do a lot of damage, however, it does apply a debuff to you. As of right now, this debuff gives you a 500% increased damage taken if hit by another Deadeye ability, and it lasts for 2 minutes. This means players, especially on higher difficulties, when the boss takes a lot longer to kill, will have to take turns in soaking this ability, especially if the same person gets targeted who already has this debuff. And finally, there are cannons placed around the room, and for the most part you will be in range of at least 2 of them. They occasionally turn round and point in a certain direction, so just make sure you're not standing in front of them when they fire. I think what we have to bear in mind is, whilst a lot of these bosses were quite simple on a normal playthrough, Mythic Plus dungeons have become a highly important factor in prolonging the life cycle of these dungeons. A lot of these dungeons and bosses will have been designed with Mythic Plus content in mind, and will therefore be much more challenging at higher difficulties. I for one really enjoyed this dungeon and look forward to playing it more. However, I might find myself avoiding this place if Bursting and Fortified are the affixes for that week. I'm just saying. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, so please comment, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.